it's time to enforce the Constitution and ban seditious Republicans from Congress. So far, well, let me start at the beginning here. After the Civil War, in 1868, when the 14th Amendment was signed into law or was ratified by the states and became part of our Constitution, the 14th Amendment has 5 provisions in it, and the third provision says that any person, any elected official who, quote, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion, end quote, against the laws, against the United States and the laws of the United States, quote, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof, end quote, that elected official may not, quote, hold any office, civil or military, including those who are, quote, a member of Congress or a member of any state legislature or an executive or judicial office of any state. Now, so far, 5 Republicans in the House of Representatives have been brought up, or have been, people have tried to bring them up and get them expelled from Congress for their participation in and support of the treasonous act of January 6th. One guy has actually been kicked out of his job. It just happened very, very recently, this day before yesterday, in fact. And that, this is very straightforward. Let me see if I can get to his name is Coy Griffin. And he was the easiest to prosecute. He was a city commissioner in New Mexico. And he was the easiest to prosecute because, under the 14th Amendment, because he was actually caught in the act on January 6th. He was inside the Capitol building. He was prosecuted for this. He was convicted. Excuse me. He was convicted and, of trespass. I mean, he got probation. He did not attack anybody. He wasn't a violent participant in January 6th, but he was there. And so now a judge has said, okay, Coy Griffin, you cannot serve on this city commission. You can't do it anymore. Sorry, got to go. Now, in all probability, this is going to be appealed. But so far, as I said, 5 members of Congress, we have tried, various other members of Congress or whatnot have tried to challenge them. That would be Madison Cawthorn, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Paul Gosar, Andy Biggs, and Jim Banks. In the case of Madison Cawthorn, that went before U.S. District Judge Richard E. Myers II. He's a Trump-humping Federalist Society judge. And he said that this law that was passed in 1872, see, the 14th Amendment was passed in 1868. By 1872, Ulysses Grant is president, and the Klan is starting to make a major comeback or explosion, basically, in response to Reconstruction and black people running for political office. And Grant, the Republican president, and the Republicans in Congress at that time decided that enforcing the third provision of the 14th Amendment against members of Congress, former Confederates, was actually just driving more and more people into the arms of the Klan. It was working out worse than they had hoped. And so they passed this thing called the Amnesty Act of 1872. And basically what it said was, unless you actually picked up a gun, if you were just supporting the Confederacy in Congress, you can stay in Congress. Now, what this judge did in the Madison Cawthorn case is said that Amnesty Act of 1872 wipes out the third provision of the 14th Amendment. Now, I don't agree with that. Most legal scholars don't agree with that. Ron Fine, who is the legal director of Free Speech for People, who was one of the litigants in the Madison Cawthorn case, he said, according to this court ruling, the 1872 amnesty law, by a trick of wording that nobody noticed at the time or in the 150 years since, completely undermines Congress's careful decision to write the insurrectionist disqualification clause to apply to future insurrections, which is patently absurd. But anyhow, Madison Cawthorn got away with it. Marjorie Taylor Greene's case went to Fulton County Superior Judge Christopher S. Brasher, who recently retired after being caught in court shouting at a black woman in ways that were, shall we say, not really a judicial whatever. And he said there's no evidence to show that Representative Greene participated in the invasion itself. So she got off on that. Congressman Jim Banks, who is a major Trump supporter, He was hauled up before the Indiana Elections Commission, and they ruled, hey, no big deal. They let him go. And in the case of Biggs and Gosar, these two Republicans from Arizona, in both cases, an Arizona judge argued that even though the Constitution outlaws this kind of behavior, Congress never passed implementing legislation to define how the courts should deal with it. And so therefore, only Congress can deal with this, and it should be through impeachment. And so basically, he threw it to Congress. So now we're at 5-1, right? We've got 5 Republican members of Congress who have gotten away with treason or their sedition. And we have this one guy, this one city commissioner in New Mexico who got nailed for it. I'm suggesting that we need to go after more members of Congress. Now that more and more evidence is coming out with January 6th, it's time to hold these people accountable.